Welcome back to Audiobooks by H.G. Schuler. Earth Chronicles, Book 1, Chapter 6.
Her name was Grace. She had made her appearance without introduction, just sort of took up with Harlan and Danny like a stray dog would have. As a painter of faces, she displayed considerable artistic talent, and had set up an easel only 20 feet from the hot dog stand. Her production drew in a regular stream of tourists. They seemed to enjoy her warmth and passion, and the odd sense of comedy in her drawings. She had a great deal of softness and color in her personality, and she managed to reflect it in her paintings. For Harlan and Danny, it had seemed easy to become acquainted with her. Soon their relationship had developed into a friendship. She was so easy to be around, so when she had invited them to move into her newly rented beach house, they readily accepted. Although it was a fairly expensive house to rent, she could easily afford it with her considerable earnings from her art setup. They had already moved in with her before they noticed her other subtle qualities. Even though she was over-the-top friendly, she had the ability to keep people at a certain distance, like there was another inner world to her life that she wanted to keep secret. One night, they noticed an intense light radiating from around the door of her room. When they cracked the door to look, the light was streaming out of her body, causing her to shine brightly. She was wearing a two-piece bathing suit, and her glowing figure, otherwise, had all the usual human markings. This is when they discovered that she was completely bald. She had been covering her baldness with an expensive, perfectly crafted wig. Suddenly, she turned and took several steps towards them. She is now only an arm's length out of their reach. There was an observable power coming from her that made it impossible for her to get any closer to them. Don't be afraid, it's not an illusion. This sometimes happens to me. If I stay this distance, you won't be harmed. We three are friends in the truest sense of the word. All of us are more favored individuals. Tonight is the start of this becoming obvious to you. Her heart and mind flowed out towards them in a way that they could lightly feel physically. As this was taking place, the bright light dimmed considerably, and she no longer had to use her vocal cords to speak. Her voice, although different in pitch and power, was emanating from her body more clearly than before. I don't mean to scare either of you. What you are experiencing is much more natural than it looks. The voice box in humans was only meant to be used as a backup communicator. There are certain areas on Earth where the magnetic pull is so great that it interferes with our original means of communication. We have the ability to transmit frequencies much like a shortwave radio, and, of course, to receive them as well. Our brains, although far more advanced than computers, can in a similar way communicate. However, we are chemical in makeup, so instead of needing the use of hardware and software such as computers, everyone is a walking liquid communication center. This has nothing to do with conjurers or spirit forces. It's simply the original, natural abilities of man. We have discovered a liquid formula that regenerates humans back to their youth. Harlan, a few short months ago, you were 75 years old. I hope that explains the dreams and out-of-ordinary memories you've been having. Danny, you were harder to do background on, but it appears you had great longevity. It is believed that you were 98 years old when we regenerated you back to youth. Sorry about the face in the mirror. It's another side effect that happens to about 15% of the recipients. You both might be surprised to know that Angela, whom you both have met, is 237 years old. She was born on May 1st, 1786. In 1863, during the Civil War, she was regenerated. She was already 77 years old at the time. A chemist named James Jenkins happened upon the formula during a research session at Oxford University. He found the formula and a brief explanation along with it inside an old chemistry book. Today, it might even be considered ancient. It dated back to the year 1016, over 1100 years ago. The note was dated only 1 year later. That was shortly after Mr. Jenkins moved from England to the United States, New York to be exact. That was in 1822. 5 years later, he used the formula to regenerate his first human. You both know her. It's me, Grace. I was 72 when I was regenerated, making me 263 years of age today. In recent years, we noticed that we were starting to age, although at a much slower rate than other humans. Something is interfering, we just don't know what. By some experimentation, we discovered that by shaving our heads, the aging was slowed down drastically. Apparently, our hair takes in the decaying effects of an atmosphere depleted of ozone. But that's only a theory. I hope some of the things that have been happening to you will now start to make sense. I suppose I should ask if you have any questions for me. Don't hold back. I'll tell you what I can. Will the face in the mirror stop tormenting me now? Danny, how can I say this? It's not tormenting you. The face in the mirror is you, but at 98 years of age. It's what you looked like before regeneration. Wow, I thought it was me in the future. I thought I was somehow looking through time. Could I ask a question now? Yes, Harlan. What do you want to know? If you can keep regenerating yourself? Why do you need to shave your head? That's a great question. We've found that if one tries to regenerate too quickly, there are serious complications. Deformities can occur, and some have died. Regenerating intervals need to be a minimum of 50 years apart. It works better if it's a longer interval. Anything less than 50 years starts to get dangerous. If we shave our heads, the aging process is only about 1/10 the rate of other humans. Actually, it's a little less. Otherwise, it's closer to a fifth or 20%. What that means is all regenerated ones remain extremely young-looking. Danny moves her hand toward Grace. Can I touch you? You're not glowing as much as you were earlier. You may. You can't be harmed now. It's much dimmer now, but I can still see it. How can skin give off light? It's sort of like the science behind effervescence or the bubbles coming from sparkling wine. There is an enormous amount of electricity in our bodies. This electricity is in a constant state of growth because it feeds on the Earth's natural electrical properties. When it reaches certain levels, a chemical reaction takes place between our bodies and the atmosphere. This reaction releases excess electricity in the form of white light. Sometimes it is accompanied by other lights, varied in color. This especially happens when the regenerating process is active or when we release adrenaline. This also tends to make the skin glow. The regenerating process is like a vegetable plant bursting out of the ground. At first, it is nicely formed, but with much growth and many changes to take place. In a few months, it's all complete. So too with regeneration. I have another question. Sure, Harlan. A little over 2 weeks ago, we met Angela at the poolside of a high-rise hotel. She was wearing a brown hood, and there were others like her. Were they all regenerated? Yes. I was one of them. What about the men with them? They had hair. It was spiked. The hair was fake. How many more are there like you? And he glances at Danny. And like us? We are alike. Let me be clear about that. The sudden emergence of youth is just new to you too. That's all. You'll get used to it soon. I promise. As to how many? I can't be sure. I'm not privy to that kind of information. I do know that for many years the numbers were purposely kept low. Until a few years ago, there were only 25 per year regenerated. The total count across the whole Earth was still well under 3,000 when we consider the ones who died from early regeneration. Harlan, you and Danny are part of a project designed to eventually populate the Earth with our kind. As to the numbers involved, I'm sure there must be a goal to fill. I was told it was a 10-year plan, but I think recently that has changed. Sorry, I wish I could tell you more about that. I'm doing the best I can to answer your questions. Again, Harlan glances at Danny. It's okay. We understand. I would like to know, why now? I mean, if you don't mind, why after all these years do you suddenly want to fill the Earth with our kind? If that's the right way to say it. Our kind is a good way to say it. We took a vote, Harlan, all regenerated ones. It had to do with wanting more friendship with our own kind, to reduce loneliness for our kind and the subsequent lack of intimacy with our kind. Why couldn't other humans fill the same needs? To a degree, they can. However, she reaches out, touching Harlan on the face with the palm of her hand. She gives a small amount of pressure, and he can feel a tingling sensation. All at once he can see not only her, but also what she sees. He sees his face as she sees it alongside her own face. We are much more than other humans, Harlan. Our brains are closer to perfection. As you said, we are our own kind. That's amazing. Yes, and there's much more for you to experience. Can you see why we want to regenerate more of our own kind? Why we desire that kind of companionship? I do now. We also want to curb or stop death one day. Have you noticed your vision improving, your strength increasing, your touch, sense of smell, and hearing have all been heightened? Danny wraps her hands around Harlan's arm. He picked up a man twice his size to protect me. Is that what you mean? You probably don't realize it yet, Danny, but you have the same powers. All regenerated ones can lift 5 times their weight. They can see with clarity 10 times farther, can smell many times better than a bear, can hear better than dogs, can feel the minuscule imperfections in a flat sheet of paper. Man was originally much more than he is today. Harlan moves his hand atop Danny's. Incredible. What happened? How did man lose these abilities? He still has them. They're just not as pronounced. We're not sure, but we think it has to do with the reason man ages. Something happened a long time ago that started that horrible process. We still haven't completely solved it. We can regenerate and drastically slow the aging, but we're not very close to eliminating it. Truth be told, we don't have a clue as to how to stop it. Can you regenerate someone from the dead? No, Danny. We can only make someone who is old, young again. Could you tell us more about our capabilities? Yes. Did you have anything specific in mind? Can we pick things up with our brain, without using our hands? Harlan shakes his head, simultaneously giving her a slight shove. Be serious. It's okay, Harlan. I don't mind. Not usually, Danny. However, if we are threatened and our adrenaline spikes very high, then all bets are off as to what we can do. The energy being released at that point is so high that we can do a lot of impressive things. It's not levitating. It's just the release of a superabundance of energy. Under normal circumstances, when we are calm, our brains need a connection, and that comes through touch. Generally, we pick things up the way everyone does, but we can handle much heavier weights with ease. However, if we experience an adrenaline rise while touching an object or something connected to the object, the subsequent energy being released will easily move it. If our mind is focused, we can maneuver the object in the direction we desire. So if we are being assaulted by an animal or person and our adrenaline kicks in, we can safely defend ourselves even if we are not able to physically move them. It may appear that we are levitating something, but like I said, it's only the energy being released. Something to keep in mind is this. Anything that is a conductor of electricity tends to increase our energy. For example, if you're leaning against a metal object, you will be able to lift even more weight or see even greater distances. All your senses will be heightened beyond their normal functions. You'll have to learn to be careful, because compared to others, you are superhuman. People will learn about you soon enough. Don't give yourself away by letting them see your capabilities. Do you have any more questions? I have one more, at least for now. What is it, Harlan? Our families, where are they? Are they close by? Are they concerned about our disappearance? The safest way to answer that is, your memories are telling you the truth. I will try to elaborate. You first, Harlan. Your wife died nearly 10 years ago, and you have been living alone in the same house ever since. Right now, I'm not at liberty to tell you where. You may try to go back home, and for obvious reasons that could cause problems. Your memories in time will answer all your questions. You also have 2 daughters, one who still lives in your hometown and one who lives in Canada. You had a son too, but he was tragically killed by a drunk driver 25 years ago. You have a grandson by him who also lives in your hometown. Your daughters know nothing about your regeneration. Your grandson, on the other hand, knows a great deal about it. He even saw you afterwards, before you lost your memory, and we ended up bringing you here. That's about the extent of my knowledge when it comes to your history. Danny, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but our records of your regeneration were not handled properly, which is not like us. It appears we took you from a nursing home. The only records we could gain access to showed that you hadn't had a visitor in over 7 years. That was from a great-granddaughter who, as far as we know, is still alive. Don't blame her, though. During the last 8 years of your life, you couldn't communicate with anyone. You were bedridden and had to be taken care of head to toe. So, you see, what you two are experiencing is what everyone who grows old wants, a second chance at life. Early the next day, about 11 o'clock, Harlan and Danny barely hear a voice calling to them from behind. They are walking past several of the beachfront shops while the voice repeats their names more than once. When they turn to look, they notice a gentleman advanced in years, walking with a cane. His face has that hard, grizzled look of experience. Due to his age, they feel sympathy for him and stop. He quickly motions for them to enter one of the beachfront shops. When seeing no danger in him, they enter the shop. He pulls them to a corner where racks that spin are covered in trinkets for tourists. Leaning close to them, he rests his hands on the ebony top of his walking cane. His eyes have a startled, half-frightened gleam to them as he starts to speak. You two have the responsibility to speak out. Both Harlan and Danny are surprised by the authority in his voice. You absolutely have to confess your situation. By God, if you don't, a lot of people are going to suffer. They're going to die. Harlan places his hand on the man's shoulder. What are you talking about, old-timers? The old man looks nervously around the shop, then out the window to the street and back. You mean you haven't figured it out yet? Raising one of his hands palm up, he begins gesturing emphatically. Listen closely. The responsibility of man lies greatly with you two. We are at a crossroads in human existence. They have us on a pathway. Next, he bends his head down, almost as if in silent prayer. My time is almost over. He holds his hands farther out away from his body, looking them over. Do you see what they've done to me? Tilting his head up again, he continues. Notwithstanding how I am now, how god-awful, I must look to you. I am a man who you must take seriously. Only 1 week ago, I was every bit as young as you. He slowly buckles forward, holding his stomach and coughing. I'm sure I was seen. They must have slipped something in my drink or maybe my food. He goes down to his knees, wheezing, straining to breathe, but continues talking. All regenerated ones were at a meeting deciding our future. Specifically, whether to increase the number of those we regenerate each year. There were also other things on the agenda, but not as important. I was one of 12 on a panel of oversight. Because of that, I had information that others didn't. There were other things they were planning that I was completely against. The old man grunts with pain, then falls over on his side. Harlan and Danny immediately kneel next to him. Even though he is weak, he continues in a whisper, forcing out the words. Can you hear me? Do you understand? Harlan gently guides him from his side to his back. You're sick. Let us get you some help? No, it's too late. He grabs Harlan by the t-shirt. Listen to me. The eliminating and repopulating humans on the Earth. I fought them on it. They're going to allow humans that are 80 and above to gradually die off. However, unless you're chosen, if you are under 80, they're going to infect you with a formula that will age you dramatically within a week's time. It's what they did to me. He coughs hard, shakes violently, and then lies silent and motionless. Harlan takes him by the wrist, checking his pulse. He shakes his head to Danny. He's gone. We better not hang around here. Neither of us has ID. She turns Harlan's face with her hand, looking him straight in the eyes. What do you make of him? Do you believe his story? I don't know, Danny. I do think there's more to this regeneration thing than we've been told.
Keep listening and watching audiobooks by H.G. Schuler on YouTube for Chapter 7 of Earth Chronicles, The Fifth Pinnacle. Like and subscribe and sign up for notifications so you won't miss anything.